Let's talk about a few things here, including Mascot Towers. Now, Mascot Towers, unit block in Sydney, where the cracks are getting worse. Now, there is going to be an awful lot of this sort of thing that's going to happen, not just in Sydney, but probably in your town too, as basically joints got slapped up and nobody really cared whether they were good or not. Danica DiGiorgio explains a little more.
It's another blow for the already displaced residents of Sydney's troubled Mascot Towers. Occupants have been advised existing cracks in the building have widened and new cracking has developed. It means urgent remediation works to avoid a structural failure. Law firm Mills Oakley has released its latest report describing the crack around the northeastern transfer beams and the basement as of significant concern. It also suggests waterproofing systems used to excavate the basement levels of the new neighbouring Peak Towers construction likely caused the erosion and destabilisation of the land supporting Mascot Towers. The complex was evacuated in June after serious structural issues were discovered. Owners are facing massive levies of up to $14,000 a month to fix cracks in the defective building. Labor is calling for a low interest rate loan from the New South Wales government to ensure rectification works start before summer. Danica DiGiorgio, Sky News.
OK, so Mark, let's imagine loans take place. Well, this is for one unit block. There's going to be a lot more, and those loans end up getting into the billions pretty quickly. I know the Upper House has done a bit of work about this stuff, but how the hell do we deal with this when it's not just one building, but an awful lot of buildings?
Well, that's right. There's no easy answer to it in that these apartment towers are springing up right across Sydney. You'll see them in Penrith, out there near the Blue Mountains. You'll see them in Liverpool, in southwest Sydney. Parramatta is full of them. You know, the whole skyline of Sydney is changing rapidly, and there's no doubt that these buildings have gone up so quickly. Some corners have been cut, and the problems we've seen are a product of shoddy workmanship. Financially, what do? I mean, if you're on the top tower, the top floor of the Mascot Towers, in a strata title there, are you really responsible for what's happening in the basement? And you've got to pay for that. So it's very harsh on the owners. I know you can say owner beware when they buy, but it's very harsh on them financially. I don't think the taxpayers should be meeting this. Is there a way of shifting the liability so that builders who haven't developed and constructed a sound building there have got to bear some liability into the future? I think it's one for government to have a look at, because I don't think it's fair on the top floor to say that person financially is responsible for cracking in the basement.
Yeah, it's this thing. I mean, Robbo, you know, let's put on the tradie, the union, whichever hat you want to with all of this. We all know that whoever privatised the certification process has done the wrong thing. It should have been something that was remain better controlled. But as I always use as a bit of a metaphor, we've already invaded Iraq. Now it's about what the hell happens next. So what the hell happens next?
Well, I think this is the real question, mate, is that you've got building companies that set themselves up to build one project and then they disappear, and then there's a Phoenix company reappears and they're over here building another, you know, high-rise tower, and then you end up with this situation. You've had the one at in Homebush, and I think you're right. There's going to be more of these things, and the real challenge is, well, how do you fix these problems? I mean, where do these people come up with 14 grand a month? I mean, I don't know anyone who can, you know, pay a mortgage, come up with another 14 grand a month to cover the sorts of costs to address the problems that are actually occurring in these apartments. And you're right. I mean, there's apartments on the eastern seaboard, whether it's Brisbane, Melbourne or Sydney, there are apartments now going up. We're no longer seeing development where it went from paddocks to houses and then eventually to apartments. We're now seeing, you know, what were once market gardens, now walk up 4- or 5-storey apartments. And it's a real problem. And the fact that no one's stepping in now and actually pushing the pause button while these things are still going up, the risk is the ones that are under construction now have got the very same problems with the same builders with a different name and a different ABN slapping up these things and then flogging them off and then closing down. There's no money left and just going, well, sorry, not my problem.
Well, I mean, also to me, Tina, we should be trying to learn from Hong Kong, New York, Singapore, all of these places, or any of these places that have high density and how they've done it. to make sure, well, how should we do it? Because we are in this transition, whether people like it or not, and we can have a whole debate about that, of going from quarter acre to units and then to towers all within a lifetime.
It's a real mess, Paul. I've got a brother that's a gyp rocker that's booked 2 years in advance fixing up stuff-ups on a lot of these apartment sites. You know, it's dire. And like you said, John, it's got to be addressed, and people cannot afford that money to keep giving to the stratas.